LaHood to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the witnesses being here today for your valuable testimony and insight. And obviously, we've heard a lot today about inflation. And when we think about the genesis of the inflation crisis we're in right now, the bottom line is the federal government spent way too much money. We have pumped $7 trillion into the economy of taxpayer money over the last 2.5 years. Now, much of that, when COVID hit and the pandemic hit, was necessary, particularly for getting vaccines out and PPP loans. But I would argue at least the last $2 trillion and maybe more than that was unnecessary. And so we're in this crisis now of where we're at. And, the Biden administration has essentially doubled down on this spending. And so, we're in the situation we're in now, what affects everything in our society, supply chains, housing costs, gas, groceries, everybody is affected by it. And so we look at the fact that now the Biden administration has created this 40-year high, really crippling consumer confidence and remitting damage on U.S. supply chains. The situation, as I see it in my district and across the country, is really dire when we look at the U.S. housing market, with millions of Americans struggling to buy, rent, and keep a home. Inflation has taken a toll on every aspect of the industry. Home prices are now up almost 30% since President Biden took office. Factor in mortgage rates doubling since January, and prices for construction materials are up 20% since this time last year. So it's no wonder why a large fraction of low and middle income Americans are being priced out of the market. In my own district, which is west central Illinois, kind of the heartland of America, properties for sale are getting 15 to 18 offers in some cases, leaving many potential home buyers continually discouraged and exhausted. I'll give you one example. Ed Neves, he's a longtime Bloomington Normal, which is Twin Cities in my district, real estate broker, and he's a home builder. He shared with me this week that his brokerage company just sold a 1,400 square foot house that's newly built ranch home that would have been priced for $220,000 in 2019. Because of inflation and the high cost of nearly every component in building a new home, that ranch just sold for over $350,000 last week. When you look at the state of our housing market, supply is alarmingly low for the demand coming out of the pandemic. In the Bloomington Normal area in my district, which has a working population of roughly 150,000 people, there would be normally 500 to 600 houses on the market at any given time prior to the pandemic. Today, it's less than 60. And again, I go back to we've spent way too much money causing inflation. Mr. Pinto, I appreciated in your testimony here today how you talk about and discuss some constructive solutions on how we address these problems. Specifically, you remind us of the Economics 101 lesson that more demand against a limited supply drives up prices. I'm afraid some of my friends across the aisle are misguided in the types of solutions needed to address the current problems in the housing market. Can you expand on how the Democrats' agenda of increased government spending can and will lead to fewer affordable housing options for low and middle income Americans, and particularly as we talk about potentially passing another Build Back Better or reconciliation bill that will cause more spending that we've already had over the last 2 years?
Thank you for that question. I think Build Back Better has about $185 billion for housing, and I think that would be highly inflationary. I think you'd have a situation very similar to what happened that I described from the 1968 bill, when construction costs, believe it or not, would go up even faster than they're going up now. Back then, construction costs went up 33% as a result of the 1968 Act. Congress had some very specific goals. Read Build Back Better. It says we're going to do 500,000 of these or 1 million of those. Once you start setting those goals, they take on a life of their own. If there's not enough material and not enough labor to fulfill those requirements, but the government's spending the money, then it has to show up in higher prices. And that then crowds out the private sector, which can't do what it does, and because they're also suffering from higher prices.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.